How is how's the youngin doing?
Youngin's great. I've got another youngin.
You got
I
two now, I know.
got a month old and a 3 year old. It's nuts.
A 3 month old, is that what she said?
Yes.
That is nuts. Do you feel older having been a dad now?
I feel like I'm getting grayer in my beard weekly. I'm
I don't see any I do see a little bit now at the bottom, but if I squint hard enough, it all looks brown to me.
getting dad strength from like the wrist,
Yeah.
holding children all the time.
From keeping them from their impending doom as they
Pretty
run
much.
run headlong into everything.
Hmm. Well, you're newly married. How's the married life?
Best 6 months of my life so far.
Heck
I
yeah.
I've been dating her since high school. So
Yeah.
uh
So like not different.
yeah, no, it's not like we met, had like a quick engagement or anything. It's like we've known each other since we were 16 years old, and I'm 20, almost 28 now. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. We're in the process of buying a home right now. So that's fun. But um
I say, yeah, buying a home and then having a kid and then getting married is the most stressful uh blood sweat and tears experience in that order. Like marriage is a joke compared to buying a house, and as buying a house is a joke compared to having a kid.
I don't look forward to any of it then. To those of you listening, we'll give a few more minutes for folks to come on in. Feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself or ask questions. We love engagement, so looking forward to that. But we'll get started in like 2 or 3 more minutes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Where are you looking for a house? I just had a buddy buy one in North Wilmington about maybe 6 months ago.
Uh, like Middletown area,
Yep.
or honestly more south. It's like if you go anywhere above the canal, it's just like you're buying a shoebox for $1 million.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's
That
like,
I mean that area is, yeah, grown a ton. I mean, just since we were born, really. I mean, it used to be just farms.
yep,
Uh, but yeah, a lot of Jersey, a lot of New York, a lot of Phillies moving south and west.
yep.
So we see it here. I'm out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And then, of course, yeah, in the Maryland, Delaware area too. The Delmarva Peninsula.
Yeah. I mean, if I had my way, I'd be living in either Utah or Colorado, but we compromised and we're living in Delaware.
Hopefully, you'll be able to get a little bit of land.
Probably. I mean, it's nice living here. My family's here, her family's here, so that's nice, but it's what it is.
Yeah, I hear you. Have you been doing much traveling lately? Travel season's over.
Uh, I will be traveling for almost 40 weeks this year
Holy crap.
for Finn. Yeah.
Nice
So
to nice to catch you at home.
I literally got back Saturday night. So from a week. So I went Sunday to Saturday. Um IT Nation Connect, for those of you who are listening, if you know about the MSP world, IT Nation Connect is one of the biggest industry conferences of the year, and I was there for 8 days, so or whatever
Nice.
that is, 7 days. Good times, good times.
Good.
Glad to be home. I'm home for 2 weeks, and then I have one more conference, and then I'm home until I think March. So I might have 90 days where I actually get to be here. It'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Fall is unexpectedly always extremely busy. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You want to get started?
let's do it.
So everyone, thanks for joining. As I stated, you may or may not have been here. We love engagement. We love questions. I always find in any webinar I do or any conversation I'm having, if you have the opportunity to ask questions that are relevant to yourself, relevant to your business, or relevant to you in any other way, that you get the most value out of it. So I always encourage, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to put them in the chat. If you don't want to put them in the chat, you can actually direct message it to the hosts and the panelists, or to like individual panelists if you'd like. There's also a Q&A. So if you have a question that you'd like us to get to and like formally answer or type something out, that's how we would do that. So today I'm joined by Brian. Brian is a cyber specialist at EHD Insurance, which means Brian has a lot of knowledge and a lot of capabilities around cyber insurance, which I think the last time we were on a call together chatting about the cyber insurance is like the new kid on the block in the insurance world, which
Very
means
much.
a lot of different things. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing at EHD?
Yeah, no problem, Connor. And thanks for having me. I always joke that, yeah, the cybersecurity, belt and suspenders approach is a good cyber insurance policy bundled with a good security awareness phishing training solution uh, to deal
Yeah.
with vulnerability. But I've been in the industry 7 or 8 years and kind of got a weird background. Where I've worked for 3 retail independent insurance agencies in my career in 3 different states. And so I've always been kind of client facing, right? Like, MSPs are with their customers. And the first agency I worked at focused 100% on technology and life science accounts. So we had, federal government contractors building weapons and software for the federal government, who always had strong cyber insurance requirements. And then we had, pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies that also had very strong, risk management programs. And after a few years in the business, I kind of looked at all of our clients and our book of business and realized that MSPs were like the best folks in the mix to work with, get along with. They really valued our expertise, and I kind of stuck with that throughout the other few agencies I've been at. So actually, January 1st of this year, I launched a site called insuranceformsps.com. Yeah, very creative marketing over here in the insurance world. And so I both help MSPs with risk management programs for themselves, but also coach and teach MSP owners or salespeople how to talk about cyber insurance with their clients. So it's kind of a dual approach. And today, I think we're going to focus more on the latter. So we're not going to talk about the best way to insure your MSP, but the best way to work with cyber insurance to grow your MSP.
That makes a lot of sense. I work with MSPs all the time, so I field a lot of questions. And
Right.
the way I've always phrased it is there's a lot of heartburn around this subject because, as an MSP, you're almost certainly not a registered or licensed insurance agent. You're not a part of an underwriter. You're not a part of a broker. So when it comes to having a conversation with your client about cyber insurance, you're pretty much only qualified and only capable of saying, yeah, you should probably have that. Go over here, learn some more. And I actually just had a conversation with a few other cyber insurance experts where they're like, you can't even give them recommendations on here's how much coverage you should have, because that is actually now stepping into the realm of representing yourself as an agent, which is against many, many laws. So
100%. And I think that's a nice way to put it. Yeah, the topic has a lot of heartburn and on both sides, right? So as me being this cyber insurance specialist, by the way, there might be 40,000 independent insurance agencies in the United States. I mean, the ones that can say they have someone who truly specializes in cyber is like, 1% of that. We have heartburn on our end where we want to provide, security awareness training and incident response planning and all sorts of, more cyber security IT recommendations, but we're not covered for that. As soon as we take our insurance agent hat on and we become your, IT expert, we're not covered from an agency errors and omissions perspective, and we're putting ourselves out there, and vice versa. As soon as an MSP says, "Oh, we love insert carrier here, they have the best coverage for this, and you need to get $1 million of coverage," like you don't have agency errors and omissions because you're not an insurance agent. You don't have a property and casualty insurance license. You don't have appointments with carriers who have authorized you to distribute their products in a specific way. So there's this gray area, right, where the MSP owner, salesperson, has to know when and where to hand the baton off to a cyber insurance specialist or insurance agent. And then, of course, to make it even more complicated, every business is often about relationships, right? And you might love your local State Farm agent who's insured your home and your car for 20 years, but really that's not the best fit for someone to talk about cyber insurance or insuring an MSP. So as we kind of go through our five levers, we'll peel back the onion on just why there's so much heartache and how to deal with it.
Yeah. So that leads us into the topic for today: 5 levers to cyber insurance success. Which the way I've interpreted cyber insurance success is you have a policy. That policy is properly written, and I'll air quote
Success themselves. So success for them means an application process that doesn't suck, that doesn't waste their guys' team's time or energy. A process where they are properly covering themselves in the MSP, but also properly covering their clients, and knowing what to answer and when and who really.
Yeah. So your first lever for cyber insurance success that you've put here is sales rep / owner education. When you say owner, is that the owner of the MSP or the owner of the small businesses?
The owner of the MSP, I mean, I find a lot of MSPs don't quite have a sales team. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, I started this 10, 15, 20 years ago and I'm the owner and like I'm responsible for sales. So typically they're, the ones fielding questions from their clients that might run into cyber insurance. But, larger MSPs, they might have 2, 3, 4 dozens of folks, right? So, I'm not necessarily want an MSP to go get an insurance license and be an expert on it, but know enough to talk the talk and be able to refer and know when they're in too deep, and also come off knowing enough where they can see as a product expert or professional advisor in that regard. Because these cyber insurance policies, really they're underwritten based off 5 metrics. How big you are, basically determined by revenue. What you do, are you a doctor's office, are you an insurance agency? Basically, what's your industry or SIC code? How much data you have, PII, PFI, PHI. Have you had an issue or not? Yes or no? And if so, tell us a story about what you learned and what happened. And number 5, which is the one where MSPs come into play, and really the only one that you can control, is your cyber hygiene, your IT controls. Do you have MFA, MDR? Do you have incident response planning in place? How often do you run backups? All of those things, right? So knowing all of those, and really being able to get back to clients in a timely manner where you're focusing in on those IT controls is super helpful. So
what are some of the things that your sales rep should be educated on? You had mentioned it a little bit, which is cyber insurance is brand new. So your standard State Farm, or really I can't even remember what my insurance is, my renters, and but they have cyber insurance. I've asked about it. But when you ask them any level deeper of, well, why does this policy make sense for me? What does this actually mean? In which events am I not, or am I covered? There isn't really a lot of detail that they can give me. So what should your sales rep be educated on?
The different areas of cyber insurance, really, up for the purpose of the MSPs being the audience, I'd say there's 4 areas. There's first party cyber, third party cyber, cyber crime, and tech E&O. And really the salesperson doesn't really need to know about tech E&O. The owner does, but the salesperson doesn't. So what all of those are and how they would respond. Basically, what is the value of the policy? So if I was a salesperson at MSP, I'd ask all of my potential customers, do you have cyber insurance? Yes, no. Do you happen to know if it's a standalone policy, or is it included, in your package? When does it renew? How much does it cost a year? What's the application process like? Has it been going up? do you know if it includes first party and third party and cybercrime? So I don't want to turn this into like an insurance education 101, because this is only one of our 5 levers. But, cybercrime is all about, voluntarily parting with funds, social engineering, funds transfer fraud, invoice manipulation. First party cyber is all about, I am the policy holder, right? And I want this policy to respond to help me. I need to be able to call a 1-800 number to get access to a privacy attorney who is a data breach response coach who can deploy IT forensics and figure out if my incident was a breach, because a breach is a legal term. And I need credit monitoring from like an Experian or an Equifax, and notification service providing. Some incidents might affect thousands of individuals. You just don't have the bandwidth to notify that many people without a professional monitoring company or notification company. And then, you might need to provide credit monitoring, and you don't want to be in the news and lose customers. So you might need a public relations specialist, right? So those are all first party. That's like the panic button. Oh crap, I need to get back up and running as soon as possible. Also business interruption. So if there's a cyber incident and you can't get back up and running, like I'm an insurance agent, I can't access my agency management system software, I'm a sitting duck, right? So that's, first party cybercrime. Third party is, I'm worried about contractors, vendors, business partners, third parties. I have an incident, and because I had an incident, my customers lost PII, PFI, PHI, and now they're suing me. Or there's also another component to it, libel and slander. If you have a blog, who doesn't these days? Or maybe you're reviewing products on your company website, and maybe there's infringement of an image you stole because you didn't subscribe to Canva or something, and you just slapped one off Google. Or you're talking smack on a competitor's product, and they sue you. So there's kind of that advertising injury liability component to that third party liability, and it's very annoying, and it always sounds like word salad, because all these cyber insurance carriers have different terminology for different coverages. So some call it multimedia liability, some call it web publishing liability, content liability, and then there is intellectual property too to be concerned about. So it wasn't PII, PFI, or PII, but it was the recipe to Coke or something. It was the secret sauce, so to speak.
Much more valuable is what you're saying.
Yeah, MSPs, salespeople need to know the gist of that. Do they need to know, oh well, if this happened, would it be covered? No, like that's like me and my underwriter nerds to figure out. And speaking of education, there are a lot of programs out there. They're, in the cyber insurance world, there's the Associated Risk Managers of Ohio have what they call their CYRM program. It's a couple $100, couple hours. In that name of that designation, they call cyber risk manager. There's some beefier ones out there: certified cyber insurance specialist, cyber professional liability practitioner. I went through one with Carnegie Mellon and an insurance carrier called Chubb. It was called Cyber Cope Insurance Certification. So there are starting to become more formal ways to learn about cyber insurance. There's a good website out there. I think it's called like cyberinsurancetraining.com or something. And that's a relatively affordable, relatively robust, and good enough for non-insurance people. So, and then in my world, I'm always telling the insurance agents who want to learn more about cybersecurity to go like the ISC squared route or like the CompTIA route, to get some crossover, because it is messy. You can't go to school for cyber insurance, really.
That is true. Most of the folks that I talk with or have questions about cyber insurance, they're already cybersecurity experts. So when you ask them things like, well, what should I be doing? What should you be doing to protect a business? they'll just start rattling off things largely from their own education in the cybersecurity space, or their actual job is them putting together cybersecurity programs for clients and then
Right.
managing them and setting them up. So all their questions are around who do I need to call? Like, who can I get cyber insurance through? How can I guarantee my clients got the best cyber insurance they need?
Mhm.
But they're coming at it from a place of, I already know cyber, but I just don't know the second word, which is the insurance. And I would
Yeah.
say, I don't know if your experience has been different, but up until recently, what actually made sense for cybersecurity didn't necessarily make sense for cyber insurance. What I mean by that is the cyber insurance policies weren't requiring really any cybersecurity to qualify for the policy. It wasn't requiring that you were actually making I don't know if this is a legal term, so I hope it's not, as a best faith effort to create additional cybersecurity. It was just like I think
Yeah.
Wes Spencer, who we both know, his statement was, "Do you have a heartbeat and do you have an EIN number?" And that was like that was it. All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
congrats. Here's your policy.
100%. And COVID changed everything. When I started in this industry, it was like, yeah, what's your name, what's your revenue, and how much coverage do you want? Here you go. And we could just, get it online or whatever and have at
Yeah.
it. And now it's, here's this 10-page questionnaire about all of these IT controls, and you need a cybersecurity expert to even help you apply for the coverage if you're a
Yeah.
small business. I mean, you wouldn't even know the answers to these questions unless you have an in-house IT director or you contact your MSP. Now, are there still carriers writing, small limits of coverage and, not so great coverage by not asking you anything? Kind of. But my train of thought is they might not be here in 3 years. So their underwriting losses will be too bad. And that is not the norm. I mean, MFA really has become the bare bones IT control to qualify for cyber insurance, or decent cyber insurance, I'll say. Decent in terms of coverage and premium. But yeah, over COVID, everybody went to go work from home, and we all started using unsecured, VPNs and Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol, and we all got hacked, and skull bones went everywhere, ransomware and extortion, and the whole industry changed. So
I think that really pushes us into the second lever here, which is MSA review. By MSA, is that master service agreement?
it is. Look at you.
I was just that was a shot in the dark. So congrats. Am I now educated in cyber insurance? I don't know. Maybe. One of the comment I made earlier about heartburn, one of
Mhm.
the biggest places of heartburn that I see MSP owners or the account managers who have to have the relationships with the clients, or even anyone who has to stand between the cyber insurance broker and underwriters and the person who's going to be covered by the policy. Because, like, as you had mentioned, the MSP is there to satisfy the policy requirements, to explain it and say, this is what it's requiring. This is what it says right here. This is what we agreed to. This is what we have to do. And then when you start getting into things, what maybe we'll get into it, maybe we won't. I'll let you drive it. Like carve outs and there's another term. It's like if you didn't do awareness training and somebody gets compromised, congrats, we're not paying out. It wasn't called a carve out. It was sublimits.
Right.
So
Yep.
when I talk to owners, I'm like, are you aware that sublimits exist in policies sometimes, or that carve outs do exist for certain activities and behaviors if you're not properly mitigating them?
Totally.
Their eyes, like they're what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm like, did you not review this with anyone who is educated in the area? So
Mhm.
what is MSA review in your mind? What should people be reviewing?
Yeah, I'll touch on the carve out thing briefly, and then we'll jump into master service agreements. So, yes, there are often always sublimits or carve backs on cyber insurance policies. A popular one right now is neglected software endorsement, right? So, policy language is going to reference NIST's common vulnerabilities and exploits database, saying, if your incident come claim time is caused by one of these known vulnerabilities that you should have fixed. I call it the IT guy asleep at the wheel endorsement. Um, your coverage limit will slowly decrease. So 0 to 45 days, you have your full limit. 46 days to 90 days, you have 90% of your limit, and so on and so forth. Where if a year goes by, you have nothing or maybe half the coverage. There's also, sublimits for contingent business interruption, right? So I always think of maybe like an Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, like a big cloud provider. Like I rely on this supplier over here. And they had an incident, and because they had a cyber incident, I suffered a business interruption loss. That's a first party cyber insurance coverage, right? So you might have $1 million cyber insurance policy, but if it's an incident due to a contingent business loss, you only have $100,000, let's say. So we go on and on and on. There's crypto jacking, invoice manipulation, bricking. Buyer beware of sublimits. And there are certain standards out there where a lot of those cyber crime ones, you might have $1 million cyber insurance policy, but for cyber crime, you probably have 0, 100,000, 250,000. You're probably never going to see millions for those type of things. And these, it's all based off claims data and actuaries, and they sublimit the more frequent things like social engineering loss because so and so clicked on a link. But one of the ways to combat cyber risk for an MSP is to have a really, really good master service agreement. And I saw a post on LinkedIn a while ago that was basically polling MSP owners on, what's your stance on cyber insurance within your master services agreement? Some MSAs, basically the contract that all their clients sign that gives all of the parameters of the relationship in terms of response times for like a password reset and just who's insuring what. And it kind of broke down like this: 25% mandate it via their client MSA, like they won't work with you unless you have cyber insurance. 25% strongly recommend it, but they don't mandate it. And then the other 50%, some just avoid it altogether, and some say, oh, it's a great idea, but our master service agreement doesn't say anything. So I kind of see the strongly recommenders and the mandators to be more of trusted advisors, right? Where the other kind of two camps, if you will, are taking the laissez-faire approach, just kind of sitting back and saying, oh, I don't tell my clients how to run their business, and I'm not gonna, step on any toes, so to speak. So there's a few reasons, I guess, why you would want to either strongly recommend it, or mandate it in your master service agreement. I mean, number one is it takes pressure off of the MSP's tech E&O coverage, right? So depending on the cyber incident, you might have, no coverage. Like if I'm an MSP if I'm let's say a doctor's office relying on my MSP's coverage, right? I'm not going to get a dedicated 1-800 incident response hotline and a dedicated privacy attorney and a dedicated forensic specialist at my beck and call for my insurance carrier. Like you're going to have to sue your MSP to get coverage. You're going to have to go after their policy. So it's messy. And I know, oh, my IT guy handles that is the common, mistake. If you read your master services agreement, none of your MSPs are going to say we're 100% responsible for your cybersecurity. I mean, same thing with, if you're an Amazon Web Services customer, it's going to say, hey, thanks for using Amazon Web Services. We'll do all we can to keep you secure. However, you're responsible for cybersecurity, and you're responsible for the settings of how you interact with us. So it gets messy. And we can think of 100, it depends scenarios, but it's best practice for MSP's clients to carry their own first party cyber insurance, cybercrime, third party, and then for the MSP to carry all of those plus tech E&O. It also, kind of improves that trusted IT advisor status, right? Like, in my world, since there's just so many relationships where, like, for instance, I just got a referral today. It was, someone who does a lot of homeowners, who's a colleague of mine, who's friends with a realtor, who his client bought a house at auction, and it's, a hoarder is there and it's residential, but they're gonna, do a renovation and flip it, down to the studs. I'm giving Connor PSD with this story.
You
And
are.
and he's going to turn into a studio for his wife for her business. And we always are referring attorneys and bankers and CPAs. So for an MSP to be a professional service provider or trusted IT advisor and be in that circle of the banker, the CPA, the attorney, which I think they 100% deserve a seat at that table. You kind of have to step into ancillary services, or at least have relationships there. Oh, I need an HR professional I can call with questions or whatever. These cyber, and feel free to interrupt me whenever, Connor, but these cyber insurance policies too. I mean, one of the big reasons MSPs push them is, other than the protection, is it's going to generate them revenue. And it does it two ways. It does it both actively and passively. Going back to those underwriters want to know those IT controls. Well, if you want the best coverage with the lowest deductibles and the highest limits and the lowest premiums, you're going to want to have good cyber hygiene. You're going to want to, have all of the suite of products an MSP can deploy on your systems. And if you don't, you're either not going to be eligible at all, you're going to get bad coverage, high deductibles, high premiums. And this varies across different industries and different size companies, obviously. So from an active perspective, oh, well, I'm renewing my coverage or I'm applying for coverage for the first time and I didn't know I needed these things, but now I do. Like a lot of those business owners have been hearing from MSPs that, oh, I should be doing X, Y, Z. And they're like, yeah. But they're not comfortable when their insurance person or company tells them you need to be doing these things. And then passively, right? So these cyber underwriters are using tools like BitSight. They're, proactively scanning the dark web and your website and your email domain. So they are trying to look out for you. They're trying to avoid claims, really. But you're on the same team in that way. So they use it from an underwriting perspective, but also while your policy is in place. So, I had a client where they do smart home contracting. So they'll like deck out McMansions with sick, TV screens and security cameras and lighting and make it all connected with, one fancy universal remote. And I was like, you guys should totally have cyber insurance. So they get it. And 6 months goes by and they get a notification from the carrier that's like, hey, you have, an open RDP port and bad actors, hackers can use that as a door into your network and you should fix it. And I said, hey, do you want to fix this? And they're like, well, let me reach out to my MSP. And the MSP was like, yeah, it costs us $300 a year or whatever to fix that. That MSP didn't have to pick up the phone. They didn't have to hire a salesperson. They didn't have to do anything. But the cyber insurance policies monitoring was basically doing work for them or creating opportunities for them.
If you're an MSP and you're watching this either right now as we're having this conversation on November 13th or at some point in the future online, I've had so many conversations with I met thousands of partners last year. And what cyber insurance policies now give them the ability to do is to say, hey, this is the policy that was written for you, or this is the policy that you gave to me that your previous MSP or that you agreed to, qualify for and get on your own. Well, if we actually want to abide by what we've said we're going to do, we need to buy X, we need to buy Y, we need to buy Z. Here's the cost of that. And so now what you're selling is not, hey, I think you should do X, Y, and Z. It's well, in the event you want cyber insurance to pay out, in the event that you want all of these order 1, order 2, order 3 resources to be able to come in post breach or just to verify breach didn't happen, you're going to need to spend another $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month with us, whatever that. I'm just making up random numbers here, right. But selling is already hard.
Everybody's doing that math. Do I buy the cyber insurance policy or do I buy the widgets to protect me, or do I buy both? And what's the trade-off and what's the cost? And for those bigger companies out there that might have a board or who might have multiple, partners or shareholders, if you fail to make those decisions and do that math, a lot of the times, if you have no cyber insurance and you have an incident and it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket, your, shareholders, employees, whoever are going to come after you from a director's and officer's liability perspective because you didn't do your due diligence and you didn't look out for the best interests of the company by getting insured when you had the opportunity.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a big trend in that, where cyber risks and cyber claims, or lack thereof, cyber insurance coverage, are creating director officer liability claims, which is a whole nother animal. I mean, I have plans to do an entire webinar about that next year. But I always make this analogy, and I think it makes sense. So if you're buying a large piece of equipment, or you're buying a commercial building, and you got to work with your banker and your insurance agent and your commercial real estate agent, all these trusted advisors, and you go to closing and they're like, yeah, where's your certificate of insurance? And you're like, oh shit, I didn't get it. The bank wants the building to be insured if it burns to the ground. So the same is true with an MSP requiring cyber insurance of its customers, right? They pay you monthly for IT services, and if they have that cyber insurance policy in place, it's going to pay that business interruption, which is your revenue. It's the same thing. So
yeah, in the event that your business is in turmoil, it guarantees that everybody gets paid one way or another. In my mind, all cyber insurance starts at the application, right? This is what you're expected of, what's expected of you, and what you're representing your business to the underwriter.
Right.
And you've put lever 3 here as a proactive application review / process. And I can't for the life of me figure out what that means. What is a proactive application review?
Well, first of all, it's early, right? Like, insurance policies, doesn't matter if it's cyber or not, every single year what day it renews, right? My cyber insurance policy runs from this date to that date. So are you starting to look at that 30 days ahead of time, 60, 90, 120? I mean, the further out, the better. And clearly we're all busy and we all have lives, but if it comes down to it and you need to implement an IT control, do you want to do that in a planned, unchaotic manner, or do you want to have to do it last minute because the policy is renewing and you need that to be in place in order to renew the coverage at a reasonable rate? So, the cyber insurance application process, all the underwriters are trying to ask is, how are you mitigating risks, right? Always be as thorough as possible. More information, the better. If you see a yes or no question and you feel like that doesn't do it justice, pretend it's fill in the blank. You can write all over those things. Those insurance applications do become part of the policy. So MSPs, of course, they want to be proactive and thorough in responding to those requests from their clients. But their clients also need to know that when they sign off on that application, it becomes part of the policy, and come claim time, it'll be treated as such. So there are some articles floating around. I'll put this one in the chat right here, where in a big insurance carrier, Travelers, got out of a claim, rightfully so, because the CEO signed off saying, they had MFA implemented across, IT administrator access, privileged access, the company network, the company email, and turns out they just had it like on one firewall, which is not the same thing. So, if you need to use an addendum or an extra Word document and to fully explain those no answers, please do so. And the one thing folks don't realize from both an insurance and a cybersecurity MSP perspective is, like, if you have big plans, and let's say Connor, your cyber insurance policy renews, December 13th, 2023, 30 days from now. And you're like, well, we have MFA for privileged access and IT administrator access, but we don't have it for all of our employees, and we don't have it for company email. But we're moving from Microsoft to Google, in the next 45 days, and our MSP is helping us, and we're going to start using Fin monthly to do security awareness training starting January 1st. That's awesome. Like, you can't sign off today on your application verifying all of those things are in place, but you certainly should write that up and tell the story that we are making improvements very soon, and at the earliest it'll be by this date, and at the latest it'll be by this date. And you can use that to negotiate with these cyber underwriters. I mean, they're often humans that can read and are intelligent and technical, and will take that into consideration. This is all about mitigating risk, and it's not black and white.
Yeah, one thing a lot of my friends in cyber insurance have said is, even as short time frame ago as 2 years, as 3 years, policies were a few pages long. Applications were a few pages long at best, and now it's like 30 pages of, do you do this? How do you implement it? Where do you implement it? How often do you check that it's implemented properly? Do you have a tool that makes sure it's checked and implemented properly? It's like, now we're getting to what standard insurance is all about. Is like, if you are a better risk, if the expected value of this policy is like a less risky as a result of you properly mitigating threats, you'll get better premiums, you'll get better coverage, it's like, now we're starting to see that the data and the answers are actually reflecting in the outcome.
They do. And I always say, if you have risk A and risk B, and they're the exact same on those metrics of industry and revenue and claims history.
Yeah.
And risk A has horrible controls and cyber hygiene, and risk B has amazing controls. I mean, the difference in premium could be upwards of 30%.
Wow.
It's just, it depends. So, but it's certainly there. So
that kind of brings us really nicely into our fourth lever, which is a cybersecurity assessment. What is the insured? What is a cybersecurity assessment, and who's doing that?
Yeah, I would bet 9 out of 10 MSPs, salespeople, or the owner, when they bring on a new customer, they're doing some sort of assessment, whether that's on site and they're physically staring at some, on-prem servers, or whether that's a huge questionnaire and a, multi-hour interview, whatever it looks like at your MSP. Include cyber insurance in that discussion or in that process, right? Do they have it? Yes or no? Why not? Would they be interested? If they do, would you be interested in a review? We have a preferred, partner relationship with someone who's actually licensed to sell cyber insurance. And we can connect you with them for no cost or whatever. You can perform a bit site scan, or our insurance carrier Chubb has a free cyber risk assessment tool that can do some benchmarking of their peers and competitors, of what limits and deductibles they have and what they think your cyber risk is, based off of 20 years of claims data. Ask about what their patching procedure looks like. Are you aware of the IT guy asleep at the wheel endorsement that could be baked into your policy? Are you aware that your policy might have a ransomware sublimit or carve back, or cybercrime sublimit or carve back? All of those things we talked about earlier, Connor. These small business owners are looking to their MSPs to give them professional advice and guidance when it comes to information technology. And, all of those controls are meant to protect them. But so is cyber insurance. So, staying away from that conversation doesn't make any sense.
In my conversations with not only companies that are insured, MSPs that are a part of the whole policy process because they have to attest to doing certain things, they cite commonalities that in most policies, there's 5 things required, at least at this point. It's MFA, segregated backups, MDR, next gen AV, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. Awareness training. I forgot my own.
Don't worry, I knew the 5th one.
Thank you. My question is, do you see a world where the cyber insurance industry creates a standard assessment? It's like, hey, just tell us if you do these things, and then let's start working on that.
I don't, because, there's, I don't know, a few dozen cyber insurance carriers, and some of them, want to play the small business, $1 million limit policy bind online game. And some of them want to insure the Microsofts and Googles of the world, where they're going to literally assign privacy attorneys and forensics specialists, like, just to underwrite the policy. So I don't, I would love for them to start um, teetering their questionnaires and applications to a cybersecurity framework that already exists, like NIST or CMMC or something like that. But I don't think cyber insurance industry is innovative or creative enough to, or not even collaborative enough to all agree to a certain assessment or a certain line of questioning, if you will. Those five things, I mean, I would agree. I don't know about the fourth one, but yeah, once we get over the MFA hump, I think MDR, EDR, and phishing security awareness training are the next two huge ones. And yeah, backups, no brainer. We're at a similar level with MFA in that regard. You don't have like a 3-2-1 backup strategy with multiple copies that are tested regularly, where one's air gapped or segregated. Like, they're all asking that question, so that's kind of common. Yeah, I don't think there would ever be a collaborative risk assessment in that regard. We are starting to see some creative solutions, like a lot of cyber insurance. I'll kind of explain this briefly, and maybe I'll throw a graphic in. But people don't understand the insurance supply chain. Maybe we should have started with this. But at the very bottom, the raw material manufacturers, if you will, are the reinsurers, right? And the reinsurers insure the insurance carriers. So reinsurers might be like Munich Re or Swiss Re. Insurance carriers, they are actually underwriting the product. They're paying the claims. They're pricing the claims. They have all the actuaries and underwriters, the Chubbs and Travelers and coalitions of the world. And then they distribute their products through, a lot of times with cyber, wholesale insurance brokers. So RT Specialty, Risk Placement Services, Fifth Wall Solutions. And a lot of times they're working with retail insurance agencies. That's where I sit. EHD and Aon and Marsh and Gallagher and State Farm and Allstate and all of those folks. And then they're working with MSPs, and MSPs are working with their clients. So there's a huge supply chain that we're not really seeing. And in that wholesale broker level, they are starting to create some common insurance applications, where if you use these questions or this form, these 10 carriers are willing to bind coverage based off of this commonality. So there's a wholesale broker limit that does it. Fifth Wall does it. So in that regard, I can kind of say yes to your question, but also no.
It's not coming directly from the underwriter or the reinsurers. It's coming from the people who are closer, I say, like closer to the middle, so to speak.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And
yeah. So anybody who wants to cut out these middlemen, you don't want to do that, because they're making it easier.
And they're probably going to be the reason you end up getting premium discounts and better security at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's different business models out there. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah. What's the last lever we've got here?
So this last lever you have here is to partner with a specialist. Now, you just got done explaining the whole, I want to call it the cyber insurance kill chain, right? I feel like that's how I want to describe it instead. But
I call it the supply chain.
Yes, the supply chain.
You could kill the supply. A lot of people think cyber insurance shouldn't exist and won't exist at some point in time. But, I wouldn't be here if I thought that. So,
I mean, I'd always say, as long as casinos are a thing, insurance will also be a thing. I view it as like, if I call it organized gambling, is that too strong? Is that too strong of a word?
Well, it's funny. So I've heard someone in the IT industry refer to the stock market as the white collar casino, and the insurance industry started out more as a stock market. That's what Lloyd's of London always was and is. I mean, there's a price for every risk out there, whether it's Michael Jackson's feet or Kim Kardashian's butt or whatever. Like, for instance, I have a fintech client who is you ever go past a McDonald's and it's like work today, get paid today. Like, well, how the hell they do that? Like we've been doing 2-week paychecks for eons. Well, they're kind of in like the prepaid, like debit card, gift card
Yeah.
world, and they have certain like banking relationships where they can do that. So that's what they do. And to get them cyber insurance is incredibly difficult. Their carrier actually just like pulled out and was like, "Hey, we'll give you 90 more days of coverage for $0 because like we're over it, like we're done, like we don't even exist anymore, basically." Because they have millions and millions and millions of PFI. They might not be a Google in terms of revenue, but in terms of cyber risk, like they've just got so much damn data that if there was an incident, it'd be massive. So you got to work with a specialist to navigate that supply chain. I mean, have you seen the meme online? I feel bad for MSPs. That's like, breaks down all the security vendors for all the different areas, and it's just like an icon, like an icon
Yep.
mecca, and you like are like, this is terrifying. So
Cyber
insurance,
soup is what I call it.
yeah, the cyber soup. So how do you find a cyber insurance specialist? Well, I'm one and I'm on this video. But I won't just say, call me. When it comes to insurance people, right? There's like the basics and the advanced. Like you have to be licensed. You maybe want to look for some credentialing. We all have, alphabet soup at the end of our names, and IT and insurance. I'm a, whatever, CIC, CRM, CCIC. Like those are all good things if you see those. Um, you can look at AM Best, which is interesting. They actually give bond credit ratings to insurance carriers. So if you're seeing anything below an A minus, like run, run immediately. You don't want to work with anything below A minus for terms of AM Best insurance rating. And then some of the more advanced things, right? What kind of technology is an insurance person going to use to help you? Are they going to do proactive scanning? Do they have e-sign? Are they going to be able to deliver your policies in an electronic manner without harassing you with hundreds of pages of physical paper? And industry specific knowledge is a huge one, especially in property and casualty. Like, are you a generalist or are you a specialist? Like, ask the question, well, how many cyber insurance policies do you write? Have you ever been involved in any cyber claims? What's the biggest and the smallest cyber insurance policy you've ever worked on? It, most insurance agents, again, are not cyber insurance specialists. I mean, you could say probably the top 100 insurance agencies out of those 40,000 probably have a cyber guy. But it's, you can be someone. I came to a meeting one time and he was like, yeah, like I know cyber, like I have a high school diploma in cyber, but like Brian has like a PhD in cyber insurance. And I was like, okay. So, there's a different levels to everything out there. And same with, attorneys. You might need, the MSP contract specialist, Brad Gross law firm to do your MSA, but to do your independent contractor agreement, like you can use LegalZoom. So it's all over the place. And it would behoove those larger MSPs who are dealing with dozens or hundreds or thousands of insurance applications to try to streamline some of that.
I actually just had a conversation with Brad Gross about, I wanted his opinion on the pending and / continuing investigation in the SolarWinds and the Enable CISOs and what's going on there. He had some interesting things to say about it, but I'll let you reach out to him or ask it publicly if you want to hear his opinion on that.
Yeah. Yeah, him and I
So
almost did a webinar, but we were too busy. So maybe next year.
yeah, almost every partner I've ever worked with works with him as well
Yeah.
for all their legal stuff, which is interesting. So it sounds like for people wanting to find a partner, it's kind of hard, but there's a few things that you could look out for. In my mind, of all the things you just said, the thing that makes the most sense is, hey, how many policies do you write and how long have you been doing this? And have you been involved in claims? A person that's continuously writing policies has been doing it for, let's say, 2 or 3 years, because cyber insurance has been around for much longer, but not really. And the third is, are the policies you writing, like, are you actually writing policies for insurable businesses, or are you just throwing it out the door like it's candy? I think that's
Right.
a really good piece of advice for everyone to take if you're still listening.
Totally. Yeah, the what did you just say there? The
Solar
oh
winds and enable CISOs.
yeah, the cyber insurance uh the VCSOs is an interesting thing too, especially. So similar to an MSP, like you get yeah, the I don't know what I want to call it, bandwidth. Like you're seeing dozens or hundreds of these applications that you have to chime in and check the IT controls on. You would want to streamline those things. But yeah, it is difficult to find a specialist, but they're out there, and luckily there are some of these educational programs where they're starting to become more common.
Awesome. Is there any, to anyone listening, anyone watching in the future, is there any advice that you'd give to them? If you're watching this currently with us, or if you registered for the webinar, you're going to be getting an e-guide, 5 Levers to Cyber Insurance Success. It'll be emailed to you shortly after this. But for those that are watching in the future, what would you suggest to them if they want to learn a little bit more about cyber insurance?
Oh man, well, cyber insurance changes so much, right? So it's hard to say where to go to in the future. But I think um, podcasts like this are always great. There's a cyber law podcast out there. I was just on the InsureSec podcast with a wholesale broker partner. There's also some of these bigger agencies and carriers are starting to really talk about this more frequently. Um, so podcasts is the way to go. There's not too many go-to books out there yet. I mean, Joseph Brunsman, Cyber Guy's got a good, decent book. Um, Fifth Wall puts out great content. Um, I put out content on insurance for MSPs, so just stay connected in the channel because there's a handful of us out there that I think are doing this whole cyber insurance thing right by really collaborating with MSPs and guiding them and really, we're a lot of these policies we're not, becoming billionaires off of. I mean, a small business physicians group with a few doctors and 10 employees, they could get $1 million of coverage for a grand or two, and commissions on that is maybe a couple $100. So I think a lot of the guys are you know in it for the right reasons. So
Where should someone go to find out more about EHD or about yourself?
yeah, EHD is just ehdinsurance.com, and you can find me at insuranceformsps.com or brianmahon.com or on LinkedIn.
Awesome. We'll have links to all those when this is put online and edited. But thanks so much for being here, Brian. I am not by any stretch of the words a cyber insurance expert, so I'm always willing, and I enjoy, a weird way, because how can someone enjoy cyber insurance? But I enjoy talking about it. It's interesting to me, at least.
I say the same thing all the time, like, hey, I'm Brian, like I like to talk about cyber insurance, and they're just like, what the hell?
Go sit in the corner. All right, we don't want to talk to you.
Well,
Exactly.
unfortunately, a lot of people leave like terrified at, like when I'm speaking.
Yeah.
And I try not to use scare tactics to poach people into buying cyber insurance, but like you got to talk about claims at some point. Like, why are you getting the coverage in the first place? You need to know the things that are happening out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could share a million horror stories, but I'm glad this wasn't one of those speaking engagements.
Awesome. Just as a reminder, we'll have links to EHD and Brian wherever this is recorded and put online. And also, if you are watching this now, you will be getting a guide, 5 Levers to Cyber Insurance Success, that was written by the wonderful Brian Mahon right here. He was more than gracious enough to help us with that. But yeah, I had a blast chatting.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. And don't forget that we had a ton of help from the Fin marketing team and Jamie as well.
And Amanda, because I know that she's the one that made the guide look good, because it wasn't Jamie. So just want to throw that out there.
No worries. Well, thank you, Amanda and Jamie. Thanks, Connor. And thanks to all you who were here today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
I'll see you.